influencing the demand. So 2 factors influencing the demand for capital goods. Oh, here we go. Coming in now. Yes, excellent, fantastic. Yes, well done. See, you guys are rock stars. Look at that. Yes, just waiting on a couple others. Yes, and come on, Isaac, you can do it. Come on, Andy, go. Making you do work this time of the morning. Goodness me, aren't I a monster? Good work, Angie. Well done. Charles, Darwish, come on, go. Nelly, go. I am wondering about that idea that I just said, you know, that augmented reality in the t-shirts and the marketing possibilities that there could be from that. That could be interesting. I'll need to do some research into how they manufacture the augmented reality images, because that could be quite a good little business, I would think. Yes, well done, Gianelli, absolutely right. Got about 30 more seconds, have to wait. Last couple come in. Could do a t-shirt for economics. That could be cool. Nexus economics. That could be economics rocks. All right, okay. Yes, good work. Now, okay, so we might have had a go at this already, so that's okay if we have. This is the work that you were doing about the decisions regarding resources. So there was a doc, we pushed it out to you. It said the price of capital goods was to increase, what decision would you make? If the price of labour was to increase, what decision would you make? If profit levels were higher, what decisions would you make? So that should have come out to you as a thing for you to have a go at. So you'd have a go at all of that in the doc, submit that, okay? Just to show that you understand that businesses, particularly thinking about the different types of resources that they're using, all right? And these can impact whether they decide, am I going to have labour or am I going to have capital? Now, when we look at the other resource, so quite clearly moving away from capital, thinking about labour, us, people, the biggest influence on the demand for labour is going to be productivity. Okay? So how productive is the labour? How good are they at doing their job? We want pizzas to be made. How many pizzas per hour? How many pizzas per hour can that particular worker produce? So if you've got the 2 workers, this one can produce 10 pizzas per hour, this one only 5, you're more likely to want to hire the one who can produce 10 pizzas per hour. City centres tend, it's all theory, okay, tend to be the more productive, right? So therefore businesses in those areas are going to be demanding and attracting more labour. So you go right to the heart, say here KL, all right, you might find that there are big banks and corporate headquarters and, you know, quite significant businesses. And they will have their base in the centre of the city, okay? Or you could think about London, right, which has had a massive financial hub right in the middle of London, okay, with all the big banks and the like. And they will be there because they just thought that that's where the most productive workers will be. So therefore they will attract the talent to there. What about this next point here? Water is a natural resource. It is actually increasing in demand, right, around the world. Right? Countries become richer, wealthier, they demand more water. Why would countries demand more water just because they're wealthier? What do you think? Why, if you're wealthier, would you be demanding more water? What do you use water for as a resource? What do you think? What might you use water for as a resource? Why, if your country is getting wealthier, are you going to need more water? There you go. Have a guess. See what you can come up with. Yes, they do. Well done. Anything else? What else needs water? Wealthier you are, more likely to have perhaps a bigger house. What might you have if you're here in Malaysia, and let's imagine you've got a big house? What else could you have with the house that has water in it? Yes, well done. Good point, Isaac. That's absolutely right. Yes, washing machines. Yes. What else? Come on, have a think. What else do we use water for? Yes, the washing machines. Yes, the factories. Yes, they do. Winching, you're absolutely right. Yes, well, that is true. Yeah, well done, Lynn. Yes, they do. Right, you'll have all of the appliances that use water. You'll have swimming pools, perhaps a swimming pool at your own house. Yeah. Anybody heard of a sport called golf? Not one I know particularly. I have played mini golf, small version. But how do you get the grass green in golf? What do you use? The answer is water. They use an awful lot of water keeping the grass green for golf courses. If you've been to Thailand, you might have discovered that there's quite a lot of golf courses. They have to have the sprinkler system. You might be, good point. Manufacturing products, there's quite a few that actually have water in them. I mean, Coca-Cola as a product is about, what, 70% water, 80% water, something along those lines. So all of those products are based on water. Well done. Tough question. Oh, here we go. Now, again, delving back into the past, all the way at the start of the course, we discussed that there was a difference between what was called a public business and what was called a private business. They were going to be two different things, two different types of businesses. So we need to figure out, we need to explain what a public business is and what a private business is, and maybe we can come up with some examples. So that's going to appear now. I'm doing this a bit differently, so don't panic too much. Here it comes. Here it should be appearing on your screen very soon. Very soon. What should appear on your screen is a pinboard, right? And the idea is that you're going to pin into the pinboard and you're going to be able to see everybody else's pin. Okay, there it is. So you're going to be able to pin into the pinboard, right? And you'll be able to see everyone else's one. So define and give real-life examples with a hyperlink. So you're going to need to ask Dr. Google, right? Public businesses versus private businesses. So what is a public business and what is a private business? And then find an example online, copy the hyperlink in, put the hyperlink into the pin post. All right? I hope that'd be kind of fun. So ready and go. You can post images as well if that's easier. Oh, here we go. Yep.
Oh wait, no. I thought pressing enter would like go down another space, but it just posted.
It posted it. Yeah. So that's good. Right? You'll be able to edit that still.
Sorry.
Right. You're also able to give feedback on everybody else's posts with like a little heart, which is kind of cool. Interesting lesson. You've got kind of got the right idea. If you're talking here, what's that? The idea, what you've got here is publicly listed. So listed in the stock market. Okay. So private means they're not listed. Public means they're listed. Yeah. That's different from what I'm thinking here. We're wanting public ownership of businesses versus private ownership of businesses. What is the difference between those two? Yeah, we're all still talking about the stock market. You go a bit further back into the work that we did. We had the public sector and the private sector, and you've got businesses who are in public sector, and you've got other businesses who are in the private sector. Have a go. Oh, I like what you've done, Tracy. All right. Yeah, okay, so we're still thinking about the stock market for a number of you. Okay, right. No problems. Okay, let's have a wee think about public businesses versus private businesses. So the key phrase here is public, and in economics, to a large extent, not every extent, but to a large extent, when we use the phrase public, we are talking about the government. All right, another way to explain it, we used to use the word state, right, to talk about the government. So you have a government business or a state business or a public business. All right. Now, yes, it gets a bit confusing because when we talk about publicly listed companies, that means they're on the stock market. Right? And some people do refer to them as public companies, but strictly speaking, they are known as publicly listed companies. Right? Private businesses, they are owned by private individuals, right, in the market. So public businesses might be, say here, the water company. Is that a government-run business here in Malaysia? I don't know. I'm assuming it is. Whereas a private business might be, Apple. Okay? The computers, obviously, not the fruit. Yeah. So that would be a government-run business, possibly the water company here in Malaysia, And then a private business would be something along the lines of Apple. That's what I'm wanting you to kind of get at. Okay? The difference between a publicly run business and a privately run business is who actually owns it, who runs it. So in the case of a public business, it's owned and run by the government. It could be the central government, or it could be the local government. Either way, it works. Yeah. Now we kind of talked about them a bit before, because when we thought about the labour market, we said how you could work for the government as opposed to working in the private sector. Okay. So in New Zealand, there's quite a big difference, and I assume there is here as well, between government-run schools and privately run schools. So here, I guess you'd say the international schools versus the government-run schools might be quite different. So those there would be two different examples. Of the difference between private businesses and public businesses. Good. All right. Now, oh, here we go. This is going back even further. Now, this was that idea we had sectors within the economy, and we talked about them all the way back at the start of the course. So, G and Ellie, I apologise. You won't necessarily ever remember this, because this is right the way back, right when we first started. Primary goods and primary businesses, businesses in the primary sector. Secondary sector, secondary goods, secondary services, secondary businesses in the secondary sector, and the tertiary businesses, tertiary products within the tertiary sector. So we need to think about, what did that mean? Remembering back all the way back to what did it mean to have those different sectors in an economy, and try and come up with, again, examples, just as we did all the way back at the start of the course. PST, primary, secondary, tertiary. What businesses might be in those? All right, what does it mean to be a primary sector business? What does it mean to be a secondary sector business? What does it mean to be a tertiary sector business? And then examples, real businesses within those. So again, you're going to see it will appear. I think this is pretty cool. Take a bit of getting used to, but it will be another pin board, and you'll be able to do PST, maybe in one, might be easier, one post. Remember this, if you hit the button, it will post it immediately. So just be careful with that. You can delete your post. There's a little rubbish bin icon that deletes it, so if you make a mistake, you can go, and it can go. All right. You can also like other people's posts, which I think is kind of cool. All right, so it will appear very soon. Reason why it's taking a little while is because I've got it projecting to the screen, so it's got to go all the way through. So there it is. I made this one like a blackboard. All right, so you can post into there. PST, so what does it mean for it to be a primary sector business? What does it mean for it to be a secondary sector business? What does it mean to be a tertiary sector business? And examples of each. And go. Here we go. Yes. Well done, Darvish. Yep, you're absolutely right. What about the secondary and the tertiary one? Good. Remember, as soon as you hit the button, it's going to post it. while you're doing that, I'm just letting you know I am tweeting the image of you writing on the Nearpod, because I think that's kind of cool. It looks visually, it looks very cool. Yes, good. Well done. Excellent. Well done, Tracy. That's very good. You've got all three, and you've got examples. Excellent. Well done. Led to believe that Apple's going to be releasing a whole lot of new products in March as well, by the way, just saying. It'll be quite interesting to see what they release then. Yes, you're right, Lynn, with regards to secondary. What about primary and tertiary? I like how you've laid that out, Isaac. That looks, it's very clear. Well done. Excellent. Good work, team. You guys are rock stars here. Good. All right. It's sometimes always a good idea when you're doing examples. I like the examples you've got. That's really good. If you can also think about like real life businesses and put them in as examples, that's a useful thing to be able to do. And again, it's just that idea of showing the examiner that you can take it just that one step further. This is the definition, this is the understanding of it. Here's a real life example to further demonstrate that I know what this means. I quite like the pin boards. And visually, I think it looks really quite cool. So I'm going to start using them a little bit more. Good. Right, ladies and gentlemen, let's start thinking about something called classification. Now, if you've done sciences, you're probably very familiar with the idea of classifying things. So the idea of classification, of putting things into groups, right? So in business economics, one of the things that we are interested in, and I know it sounds a bit odd, but we're interested in how successful businesses are. And one of the ways that we measure business success, I know it's odd, but we measure business success sometimes by how big the business is, right? So we might think about the success of the business based on how the size of it, okay? Right, so that might be a way that we could measure success of the business. Another way we could measure it is by thinking about the activity that the business is involved with. So we could classify it and say it's public sector, it's a public business, it's a private business. We could classify it and say it's in the primary sector, it's in the secondary sector, and so on. We could also think about something called the legal structure, which we're going to get to. Don't panic, we will get to that. But you can put them into different categories based on their legal structure, right? Now, this is the one, the step 2 is what we're going to be thinking about today. We're going to be thinking about the size of these businesses. And because you've got case studies already of a business that you've been looking at, we're going to be adding to your case studies based on this idea about size, all right? So, let's think about size, right? So, just thinking about that one idea of size, it can be broken up into different parts. There is a little bit of terminology here, so apologies here. you can think about something called turnover, not the apple kind that you get from McDonald's. No. Right? But turnover in the sense of the actual volume of sales. So when you think about turnover, you're thinking volume of sales. Right? So how much are they actually making? What's the total revenue that they're getting? So for example, they might be, less than $1 million, or it might be between $1 million and 5 million, or it might be over 5 million. Okay, so businesses like Apple, okay, they sell millions and millions of dollars worth of product. Okay, so they are considered by turnover to be a large business. Yeah. If instead we think about employees, how many people you employ? What's your workforce? How many teachers are there here at Nexus? They're the employees. How many teachers are there in all of Taylor's? Right, they're the employees. So you can look at the size of a business based on the number of employees. So if there are less than 50 workers, we tend to say it is a small business. If there are between 50 and a couple of hundred, it's a medium-sized business. And if they're over 250, it's a large business. Now, just because I know some things, one of the weird aspects of business statistics is that you can find out some quite quirky things. So if you're thinking about the number of employees that a business has, well, one of the businesses that employs more people than any other business pretty much in the entire world is in America, and it's known as Walmart. You might have heard it before. Okay? Maybe you've gone into a Walmart before, I don't know. But it is one of the businesses that employs more people than any other business anywhere. And one of the reasons why it's able to employ so many people is because it's got a lot of locations around the world, and they're very big locations. Right? So it employs more people. If you consider government-run organizations as a business, then the next biggest would actually be the North Korean army, believe it or not. I guess in North Korea, you've kind of got the option of being in the army or not. And you possibly want to be in the army, then you get the income grants from that, I don't know. But Walmart, North Korean army, employ huge numbers of people. You can also look at size based on the amount of capital that your business employs. So we talked about the idea of capital versus labor. So maybe your business invests a huge amount of its money in capital goods, robots, technology, all of the bits and bobs that you see. You could also think about the profits able to be earned from the business. And we know some businesses that make a lot of profit. So that then could give you an indication of the size of that particular business. We can also think about this idea of stock market value. So if they are listed on the stock market, and not every business is, and you might be quite surprised at some businesses who actually aren't listed on the stock market. But if they are listed on the stock market, how big is their valuation? How big is the amount of money tied up in the stock market with their shares? So if you consider companies like Apple, okay, for example, they are classified as a $1 trillion company because of the value that they have tied up with the stock market. Now, Apple's actually on its way to being a $2 trillion company, just saying, right? And other businesses like Google, they're obviously up there too. And Tesla Motors is doing incredibly well at this particular point in time too. All right, so turnover, number of employees, maybe capital employed. That's quite a tough one to figure out, but it's about the amount of money that's invested. All right, so you might be able to find that online, possibly, for the amount of profit that they're able to do. Now, again, because a lot of these businesses potentially are listed on the stock market, then they're actually obligated to tell the world and their investors how much profit they're making. Not every business does. All right? And the last one, stock market value. So again, if they are listed on the stock market, then you'll be able to find information online about what the value, the total, what's called capitalization on the stock market. Now, here's what I'd like you to do. I'm going to give you a bit of time, and I want you to find out as much as you can. You may not be able to find all of it about your particular business case study. Okay? You may not find it all. So turnover, number of employees, capital employed, if you can find that out, levels of profit. You might not. Okay? And if you can't find any, all of these, don't panic. Right? It's not a, pass or fail sort of idea. It's just finding statistics and figuring out what it means with regards to the size of the business. And likewise, stock market value, because the business you picked might actually not be listed on the stock market, in which case you won't be able to find that. You may not be able to find the profit levels, and you may not be able to find capital employed, but you could be able to find number of employees, and you could be able to find potentially the turnover. Okay? So, because that might be listed online. All right, so that's what I'm going to want you to do for your particular case study. Is that it? Yes. So, what I want you to do is to add to your case study information regarding size, so turnover, employees, capitalization, stock market, right, valuation. I can't remember the order that we had them in. Capital employed. And profit. So those are the things I want you to
Mr.
follow.
David,
Yeah.
the case study, because I handed it in, so then I don't have access to it. So do I just unsubmit it?
Yes.
Okay.
This is something I learned as well the other year, is that when you submit something, you can actually unsubmit it, add more to it, and then resubmit it, which is quite cool. It's a very good feature. We use it here quite a lot as staff because we are constantly doing different professional learnings and different things, and we then submit what we do, that goes in, and then we get a feedback, and then we get it back, and then we add more info and then resubmit. Okay. So yes. So in the online submission for your case study, you just unsubmit it, because there's a button that says unsubmit. Unsubmit it, add information to it based on that, and then resubmit. Right? Now, as said, you may not be able to find all of this information, and that's absolutely okay if you can't. See how you get on. All right? We'll give you a couple of minutes to have a go at that.
Mr. David,
Yeah.
I don't the for the size of business, right? I don't quite get what does it mean by the capital employed.
Yeah,
So what
that's
does it?
one.
Yeah.
It depends very much on what your case study is. I can't remember. But if there is information, it will be online, I would say, and it will be about how much money they have invested in capital goods. But
Oh, okay.
to find that out, you might need to find like an annual general report for the business. You
Okay.
might be able to do a search for that specifically, for that
Mm-hmm.
information, but it's a lot harder to find.
Okay. Thank you.
I trust you're getting on all right. Now, I do have, obviously this week we've got set the 3 lessons, but we've also got another additional thing to consider, and that is we're getting another new member of class. Fingers crossed. That will all work through. The
is it Eric?
Yes.
Oh yay! Let's go.
So some of you might know Eric already, apparently, but my understanding is that he will be joining us tomorrow. So I've sent him an email link to the classroom, so he'll be able to join the classroom, and I'll obviously send him the link to the sites, etc. So if you do know Eric, because I believe he's been here at Nexus already.
Yeah, he was here till year 9. Then he left for like a year.
Okay, so then if you know Eric, then maybe make him feel welcome. Obviously, he'll be online, right, with the rest of you, but we'll be able to just sort of say hello and those sorts of things. But if you know him personally, like you might have been his friend or something when he was in year 9 or whatever, maybe just send him a quick email saying, "Hey, good to see you," that sort of idea. Good seeing you in class, just so that he feels that he's obviously connected, which will be a challenge because obviously everybody's distance. Right. So turnover, volume of sales. So how many sales are they making? Right. So per year, usually you'd say you made this many sales, or they might actually put the information online as how many sales per quarter. Right. Apple, interestingly enough, Apple can be quite, not secretive isn't the right word, but sometimes they don't want everybody to know the actual number of sales, right, with regards to all of their products, because they sell a lot of products, obviously phones and computers and watches and everything else. But sometimes they will tell you, and other times it will be considered to be a bit of a, not a secret, but they just won't be quite as forthcoming with some of that information. So I don't know how you've gotten on with that one. Number of employees, again, if it's a company that is online, that the information is available to you, then you should be able to find that. And as I said, companies like Walmart, for example, they have the most number of employees out of any particular business. Good man, Yassin, thank you. Submitting that. Capital employed might be quite difficult to find. As said, again, if it's a business where there's a lot of information about it online, you might find that there. You might be able to find like reports on the business and have a look. So sometimes on the business's websites themselves, they'll have like tabs, and it might be about us, and they might give you information about the business itself, its history, how many employees it has, how many branches, that sort of information. So sometimes on the website of the business itself might actually put in there about this sort of information. The levels of profit, again, might be difficult, particularly if it's not a business that is information online. And if you haven't found that, that's absolutely fine. Okay, whatever it is you're able to find is kind of the point behind this, right? Some way that you're able to say how big is this business. Would you classify it because of the revenue? Would you classify it because of the sales? Would you classify it because of profits, the number of employees? How would you classify this business? Would you say it is small? Would you say it is medium? Or would you say it is large, kind of like the Starbucks coffees? Yeah. By the way, Starbucks is quite a large company. And again, stock market. If they are a business that's in the stock market, then again, that information should be available. And you should be able to find it either, again, through the company's website or through the stock market itself. So if they're listed on the New York Stock Exchange, for example, you might be able to go to the stock market page, the New York Stock Exchange page, and find the business. And in there, sometimes they little codes for the businesses, but you find the business and it should be then listed as the market capitalization is what they tend to call it. Now, if you haven't managed to find all of that, that's okay. That's absolutely okay. You can work more on that. I'm wanting these case studies to be things that you work on over time. Right? I'm wanting this to be something that you're going to add to, so that when you get asked exam questions about turnover or profit levels or the size of businesses, you can use as a real life example the business that you've got. I think it's a really good practice also to get into, right? In the not too distant future, we are going to be talking about macroeconomics. And in macroeconomics, we're going to be discussing entire countries. So we will be using a lot more of real life examples. What is the growth rate of this country? What is the inflation rate of that country? What is the unemployment rate of that? And you'll be needing to use that information and say, well, if we compare the data between these two countries, this country appears to have grown more than that country. Well, comparing the size between one business and another, which business is bigger? I mean, the classic one that I've had students talk to me about is Apple and Samsung. Because Apple is obviously a very big business, but Samsung is a conglomerate. And therefore, it has all of these different divisions. So by comparison, you can't really compare the two. You can't, unless you are to compare the size of Apple's smartphone division with Samsung's smartphone division. That you could compare. But overall, Samsung would just absolutely dwarf Apple. Right, in the sense of the number of different businesses that it does. However, if you look at the size of Apple in the stock market, then Apple just annihilates Samsung, right? Because Apple's $1 trillion company heading towards $2 trillion. So dependent on the measurement, the metric, the tool that you use, you will find different sizes, okay, of businesses. And you might have a different decision. Well, in this metric, it's actually smaller, but in this metric, it's bigger. And that's absolutely fine. Okay? There's nothing right or wrong about that. That's just the way the data works. Right? So you can even look at the different divisions. Say, if you're talking about the Apple and the Samsungs, as said, you could look at the different divisions within them and say, well, Apple has a bigger division on say, the watches, but Samsung might have the bigger division with regards to the phones. You know? That's sort of an approach you could take. So looking at individual aspects of the different businesses and saying how big they are in comparison. All right. Now, not very much more. We're going to finish now. All right. Now, one of the next things that we're going to be moving towards is we're going to be thinking about how, well, business objectives. I quite like that frame. That's quite a I'm going to think about that, all right, in the future. Yes, we're going to be looking at how businesses work out their profits, okay? Because one of the aspects about size was the amount of profit that they were in. Well, how do they calculate profits? And we're going to talk about how businesses might have as an objective, a goal, to maximize their profits. Well, if that's their goal, then they need to know how to maximize their profits, but they need to know what the calculations, the formulas, etc. are. So we're going to do a little bit of maths, a bit, okay? So don't panic, all right? It shouldn't be too big a challenge, all right? I don't know, I mean, you're all mathematicians, so you'll be fine. The maths will be addition, subtraction, and division, all right? That's all. So you could perhaps introduce some percentage change in there, right? But we'll cover all of that. So I'm going to say that you're all going to be fine with the level of maths that we're looking at in this next section. But I'm just forewarning, forearming you that this section is going to involve discussions that are mathematical, where you will be needing to think about different equations and maybe work out an equation or two, and think about what that equation looks like in the real world. Okay? There's a little bit of that in there too. So it's a little bit conceptual, and we'll come to that. But letting you know that that's coming up in the next little while. So we've got 3 lessons this week. We've got Eric starting tomorrow, so we'll be saying hello to Eric. Please, if you're able to finish work on your case study, that's brilliant, fantastic, rock stars. Otherwise, as we'd say in the land of my birth, he korera, which means goodbye for now.
Thank you, Mr. David.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. David.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. You all right, Mark? Yeson, you gone? Yep. Andy, you're okay? Still in the meet?